And thanks to the panelists so far for providing a lot of enlightening facts and information, which is really helping us all come to some stronger conclusions about what the future fuel mix should be. Thank you for that. One of our big challenges globally as society and as an organization, a conservation organization such as WWF, in fact, our biggest single priority as an organization globally is tackling climate change. It's dealing with carbon emissions, and it's dealing with them in a way where we can provide security, reliability, and all of those other issues as well. But it has to be able to tackle climate change at the same time. And so one of our challenges, of course, when we look at the fuel mix consultation, as been noted by a few other panelists, is we're looking at something, or one piece of the jigsaw, without necessarily knowing what some of the other pieces are. So that we think there are basically four elements to any kind of coherent energy policy that are needed in order for it to actually all fit together. I've spent quite a few years looking and participating in European energy policy, and the elements within it, I think we can learn a lot from for Hong Kong as well. Number one is actually time. What kind of a time horizon are you planning on? How long for? 2023 might sound like a long time away. It's just around the corner for infrastructure investments. And it's actually, it's almost too late in some cases. If you look at Europe right now, they're actually consulting on their 2030 policy already and trying to lock that in place. Because 15 years from now, that's about, they need that 2030 yardstick, and they already have a 2050 goal in place. So we need some longer term thinking in terms of what our climate policy should be for Hong Kong beyond 2020. Although we do know adopting government's policy, adopting the previous 2010 consultation is a step forward. At least it's bringing the issue of a climate and a carbon policy back up the agenda for Hong Kong. So that's really something that urgently needs to be addressed, and on a longer time horizon as well. So number one is time. Secondly, once you've got an idea that you're going to work on longer timescales, what should those climate numbers be for Hong Kong? Interestingly, in Europe, a decade ago, there was a lot of cynicism around whether certain carbon targets could be met, certain renewable energy targets could be met. A lot of those cynics have been silenced over the years as industry stepped up, as people have stepped up, as consumers have stepped up, and in particular governments have stepped up and year by year advanced towards those targets. So there's no reason why we couldn't be thinking in Hong Kong of a 2050 target of zero net carbon for Hong Kong. That could well be possible. And if you don't have that kind of a long-term target, how could you possibly know what your next step should be, i.e. what our fuel mix should be in the next 5 years or 10 years? So a robust climate target over a longer time horizon is absolutely essential for Hong Kong. And of course it should be an absolute emissions target, not an intensity target. An absolute emission target is consistent with a developed economy. The next pillar, of course, once you've got a climate target, is demand-side management. Some very good comments from Daphne and others on the demand-side management. The overall average is you can cut your demand by about 50% globally, based on numerous studies out there by Ecofis and others. There's no reason why we couldn't be reaching to that in Hong Kong. And of course, that has a big effect on your fuel mix as well. Next, we come to the fuel mix consultation itself. Option 1, option 2. I would posit that it's not necessarily about option 1 or option 2. It's really about, do we have a vision for an integrated energy system, or do we want to go it alone? That's really the crossroads that we're at here. And if you've got a good idea of where you want to go over the long term, if you believe that you can actually substantially reduce your greenhouse gas emissions over the long term for Hong Kong, then the only real outcome is that you need interconnectivity. You cannot run a renewable energy system globally in Hong Kong. We're too small, and there's too much intermittency as well. You start building scale over a larger geographic area, and you can actually get much further, much faster as well. And Hong Kong could actually be a leader in this regard. It could be encouraging of China's Southern Grid to produce a different kind of energy specifically for Hong Kong. I'll give you one example. Slightly different example, but the Dutch railway system last week came out and said 100% renewable energy, but it has to be new renewable energy. They said, we'll buy electricity, but we wanted the power utility to provide new additional RE, not existing RE. So that sends a forward-looking market signal to industry to actually produce a different kind of a commodity that needs to be consumed. So that could be possible here. Obviously, just taking 30% of power from China's southern grid now with an awful lot of coal in it is problematic. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe there's a different way of looking at it. Conversely, the gas option, that might sound like a 2023 option for option 2, but it really is a 2040, 2050 option, because when you build those new assets, they have a life of 30, 40, 50 years. So implicit in the fuel mix is some very long-term decisions, but it's not explicit, which comes back to my point of actually making long-term decisions. So if there's some way of actually bringing these different issues together into a coherent roadmap for Hong Kong, I think we have a really good opportunity here. In particular because there's very few places in the world where you can govern a city and regulate your power sector at the same time. That gives us a very unique opportunity in Hong Kong as well, and something that we could demonstrate to the rest of the world as well. So that will be my kind of final conclusion and thought. Think long term, think about climate targets, and then from that, think about what we can do in this next step, in this next discussion, in this next decision. Thank you.
Comments, I think, or quick responses. Perhaps on the environmental front, we've heard about the comment that we are sort of passing the buck to the mainland under option 1. Now, I just want to share with you some facts we got now about first of all, we're not importing electricity under option 1 from Guangdong. We are saying that we're going to import electricity from the entire CSG. Now, you have to look at the CSG, the fuel mix. Right now, the fuel mix of CSG comprise about 30% or so hydro, about 10% or so RE plus nuclear and things like that, and the rest of course is thermal. Now, how does it compare with Hong Kong in terms of the carbon emission? I've heard the comments, I read the news yesterday, and some information which I think I should sort of ratify or try to clarify. It's been mentioned that right now the carbon emissions for the locally produced electricity per unit, have you ever looked at the Euro electricity bill? There's actually an information about how much CO2 is being produced by every single unit of electricity produced locally. And in the case of HEC, correct me if if that is not correct, it's about 0.79 gram per unit, if I recall correctly. Now, in the case of CLP, that is better because we got some elements from some import electricity from Daya Bay. So, how about CSG? According to their report, right now the CO2 per unit is about 0.577 gram per unit of electricity. So in terms of CO2 production, you tell me which one is better.
It's a kilogram.
Sorry?
Kilogram, not gram.
Gram. If I get the figures right. But anyway, it's the same basis of comparison, 0.577 and 0.79. Now, down the road, now we talk about the future development, not just a snapshot right now. Down the road, it is already a national policy to go greener. So you've heard lots of the national leaders saying that we will have to, the country as a whole will have to use more greener energy in future. So we expect that as a major participant or stakeholder in the entire electricity industry in the mainland, the CSG is going to use more and more cleaner energy. And in fact, we are aware that quite a number of different projects that they are going to pursue, they will be having more hydro in terms of the quantity. They're going to have small RE. There are quite a number of wind farm projects in nearby areas. So we expect that the fuel mix as a whole of CSG will be greener down the road. Now, the other thing is about the planning horizon. We have mentioned in the consultation document we have adopted a planning horizon of about 10 years, and that takes into account the time required to put in place the necessary cross-boundary infrastructure if we're going to go for option 1. So it's more like a immediate planning, so 10 years down the road. Now, after 2023, what will happen? Of course, it will be subject to another review. More planning will have to be done afterwards. But for now, the planning horizon is about 10 years. Demand side management. Let me also mention one more point about the CSG. I think Gavin mentioned that whether we should sort of earmark certain sort of key source and then make sure that we will be importing, say, like hydropower from the CSG, designate the source of import. Now, we have thought about that as well, but the underlying reasons for many countries to do that is to make sure that they will be setting some sort of market signals to encourage the development of RE, right? That's the overall objective of earmarking certain portion of their import as a sort of ROE or clean energy. But if you look at consider our case in this context, right now, as I mentioned, it is already a national policy to develop RE on a massive scale. They would, whatever, regardless of whether Hong Kong is going to import electricity from the mainland, they are going to develop RE anyway. So what is the point of really earmarking certain RE when in fact we do not know, we cannot say for sure. Once the electron is up to the grid, we cannot tell whether it is coming from which particular source, unless you are going to have a sort of dedicated import through a dedicated transmission line, which, as you know, is not super cost effective. So perhaps one final point about demand side management. We have, throughout the past couple of years, we have put in place a lot of different measures, be it policy measures, legislation, things like that, to encourage energy efficiency. And we have seen some encouraging signs. As we mentioned in the consultation document, the pace of electricity growth over the past 5 years or so has slowed down because of the sort of general awareness of the need to conserve energy. But still, the past growth is about 1 to 2%. And that's why we have adopted that sort of as a planning horizon or planning parameter for us to plan ahead 1 to 2% of electricity growth from now till 2023. Now, we have been given some suggestions saying that perhaps we should be more aggressive, adopt a target reduction of about 30%, as mentioned in some sort of Green Council. You're aware that the Green Council has mentioned that we would be able to achieve 30% by the year of 2030, so it's 2030 target. Now, what is the consequence of doing that? Will be that we will have to plan accordingly less, or fewer units to meet the future demand. Because that once, let's say, assume 10% cut in 10 years, then we will use that as a planning parameter, and accordingly we will need to plan fewer units to meet the projected electricity demand. Now, if we cannot achieve that 10% reduction, then what will happen? We will not have enough electricity down the road. So that's why it's just as a matter of planning, we have adopted a planning parameter of 1 to 2%, having regard to the past growth in the past couple of years. So very quick responses.
Thank you, Donald. Now I would like to take the first 3 questions from the floor. Please